I'll start this video off by saying this. I didn't get 95,000 subscribers by not knowing what I was talking about. Some people serve America and some people scam America. And the craziest part about it, they smile in your face while they're doing it. And this video is going to show you exactly who those people are. You guys gotta check this video out.
Figure out who knew what and when is Minnesota-based journalist who's been covering the fraud since, I believe, 2018, if I have that correctly, Liz, but it's Liz Collin. And I know that she's also spoken to a lot of people who've been hard to reach. We've asked for a lot of people out of Minnesota. You've managed to accomplish getting in contact with these prosecutors. Let's talk about exactly what's going on. Fry, Omar, Ellison, how deep does this go into politics?
And guys, when you hear this, when you watch this video, and I pray to God that you watch this all the way through, because there is so much fraud, there's so much corruption, and there's just so many people getting over on the next guy. It's so much of it going on. It's like they step on the little people just to get higher and higher and higher. And they keep stepping on the little people, and the little people keep voting for these people, but they don't see what they're doing wrong. I pray to God that America, the part that sleep, they wake up very soon because I'm telling you, this video is it's sad, It's sad and it's getting tired of I'm getting tired of putting this content out because it's the same thing every time. A lot of these people are not getting held accountable, and I think that it's time that somebody, just one person, you know, gets held accountable because I feel like it's going to be a domino effect. And I don't mean to keep talking, but let me know what you guys are thinking so far down below in the comments.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there is an overlap with plenty of Democrats in power in Minnesota with all of this. It was the spring of 2021 when the raids involved with the $250 million fraud scheme tied to Feeding Our Future was first exposed. Even before that, though, you're right. There was a suspected $100 million fraud tied to overbilling at dozens of Somali-owned daycare sites in Minnesota. That was making news back then. So the question of who knew what and when, you laid that out. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she held several events at the restaurant named in the Feeding Our Future fraud, including hosting her congressional win in 2018 at that very restaurant. So she knew one of the owners very well. Salim Saeed is his name, who has since been convicted. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry's senior policy aide, Abdi Nur Salah, also entered a guilty plea. He was tied to the case. Campaign donations from some of the defendants in Feeding Our Future eventually returned, as you mentioned, to Jacob Fry, Attorney General Keith Ellison, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. But you're right, I sat down with the lead prosecutor in the case, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, talked to him months ago, and I asked him, will we see any of these political leaders indicted? At the time, he said he could not comment on future indictments, but even back then, the feds made it very clear that it seemed that these cases were still wide open. Now we're hearing about multiple social programs in Minnesota, and these investigations seem to be wide open at this case, and I think this federal spotlight certainly is helping at this moment, Will.
Okay, let's explore really quickly together, Liz, the questions of could and did. What I mean by that is we have audio of Keith Ellison. As you know, Keith Ellison having a conversation with many of the people involved in this program wherein he seems to be suggesting that he'll get into any type of investigators off their back. Like if there's any holdup in some of the money going to their programs that were fraudulent, he'll grease the wheels, he'll figure out how to keep it going. They were complaining that people were starting to step in and stop the flow of funds. And Ellison seemed to be saying, well, where? How? I'll figure it out. So the question is could and did. Could this have been to this scale without all of these politicians knowing about it? And did they know about it?
It seems at this point, Will, hard to believe that someone did not know about this. You have a state senator, Omar Fateh, celebrating the fact that the money kept flowing. You have a city council member in Minneapolis, also part of that celebration that was actually held. It's on video. There are recordings of that as well. And our reporting dates back.
And the craziest part about it is you at home, you would notice if 20 bucks went missing. But these politicians are claiming to see hundreds of millions of dollars go missing, but no one knows what happened. No one's seen anybody do anything. That's the craziest part, and I think that's the question that we need to be asking.
Years at this point, going over that celebration that took place, unless none of these people, which I find it very hard to believe, are not talking to each other at all. And now you also have these whistleblowers that have come forward recently saying that they went to Governor Tim Walz 7 years ago when he first came into office, and they wanted to bring these red flags to his attention, and they say that they were met with silence. So we're seeing that now on Medicaid funding perhaps being cut if Walz doesn't take this more seriously, according to that letter that was sent from the federal government on Friday. But we have multi-billions of dollars in fraud in Minnesota. And again, this has been ongoing for years. So just on a personal level, I've been a reporter for 20 plus years now. At this point, I find it really hard to believe that someone at the top did not know something.
Well, I have no doubt, Liz, that you'll be the first to know if that prosecutor, Thompson, comes back and says you will see a Ellison or a Fry or an Omar in cuffs. You'll be the first to know. So we hope you'll come back here and let us know about that, Liz Collins.
Absolutely. Thanks, Will.
Let's get to Republican John Barrasso of the great state of Wyoming, Senate Majority Whip and member of the Foreign Relations and Finance Committees. Great to have you on the program today. I want to talk about what's at stake with what's happening in Minnesota. You've got a former vice presidential candidate who's being looked at this, the governor of that state, Tim Walz, and you've got Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and others being looked at. What's at stake here?
Well, the fraud and corruption in Minnesota, and especially among those elected officials, is staggering. And as you said on Friday, Harris, that's just the tip of the iceberg that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is something that's criminal, it is massive, and it is sleazy. And it looks to me that the officials in Minnesota were well aware of it. They looked the other way because they needed the votes of a certain community there. It does look like it involves the governor, who's a Democrat, who was the nominee for vice president of the United States. And it also looks like money has been funneled not just to criminals, but also overseas and possibly also to terrorist organizations.
Yep.
And what's
Exactly. And that's the part that people need to understand. This isn't a clerical error. This isn't a mix-up. This is what happens when corruption gets treated like a cultural program. Meanwhile, Trump is out here cracking down on it, and somehow he's the bad guy. Make it make sense.
make this so sleazy is so much of this money, they did it under the guise of trying to help children and children with autism. They didn't care at all about that. They just wanted more names to put under more fraudulent documents. And then the people in Minnesota, it looks like, rubber stamped it. The money started to flow, and they never looked back. This was set up to defraud the American taxpayers. And I'll tell you, we need to go after all of these folks who need to be held accountable for what I believe is criminal behavior.
You know, Senators, you were talking about what was happening. Our detail today that we're drilling down on, one of two of them, is the food programs. I mean, you've got a congresswoman on Capitol Hill right now, Ilhan Omar, whose people in her very own staff, one of whom has already committed and is convicted because they confessed to doing this, that they took $2 million in food that was supposed to help people during COVID and used it for personal benefit. I mean, this is a big deal, reaching all the way to Capitol Hill. What are the ramifications there?
Well, there needs to be legal proceedings. You got to go after these people who I think intentionally refused to follow the law, and the officials in Minnesota really didn't go ahead and try to enforce the law. And we've seen this also in Medicaid there in Minnesota with fraud there. We've seen it with the food programs. We've seen it with welfare. Apparently, they were trying to sign up so many people they ran out of names. So went to a website, www.randomnames.com, to make up names. And the money was so big, we understand that some of it went to buy BMWs, Mercedes-Benz. Some of it even went to buy real estate.
Come on, like at some point, somebody has to go to jail. www.randomnamegenerator just to do some fraud. And these people are in high positions. And I think Ilhan Omar, she might even be the tip of the iceberg. This is not the only place that this happens. There's millions and millions of dollars, trillions of dollars that people pay in tax. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't think all of it goes to what it needs to go to. So she's the tip of the iceberg. Let's keep going, guys. Make sure you're liking the video.
Overseas. But it does look to me, Harris, and I think you had Kim Strassel on last week, so many of these government programs are just set up to be taken advantage of, and the Democrats seem to want to do that. They don't look for accountability. We're seeing it right now with Obamacare and what the Democrats are trying to do with these additional Biden bonus COVID subsidies. And as the Wall Street Journal pointed out today, you know, Obamacare is a mecca for fraud.
Well, look, I'm looking at my notes here because I know we have a bit of a quote to speak to what you're saying. I mean, the Medicare, Medicaid is so important, that, as well as the Senate is set to take a test vote Thursday on this part of it. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes that those subsidies are, quote, a mecca for fraud and ripe for gaming. Here's part of it. The GAO last fall began an undercover test into which it submitted insurance applications for fictitious individuals to the federal Obamacare exchange and insurance brokers. Nearly all of its invented people were able to enroll in subsidized plans despite submitting false or no records to verify their identities and incomes. Senator, as we learn more about this, the American people, you used one word, but they've been ripped off and they cannot be reimbursed.
Yeah. And Obamacare continues to fail the American people. I'm a doctor, practiced medicine for 24 years. I want people to get the care they need from a doctor they choose at lower costs. Obamacare has made that essentially impossible. And so the Democrats realized the failures of Obamacare, so they propped it up with big subsidy checks directly to insurance companies. Doesn't go through people, doesn't go through consumers. It goes right from the federal government to the insurance companies. And look, you know, Obama promised that premiums would drop by $2,500 a family. Instead, they have doubled, and the insurance company loves getting those checks. Their stocks are up 500 to 1,000%. So Obamacare was never affordable. And what the Democrats are trying to do now is saying, oh, my gosh, we need to keep these COVID subsidies going, these added bonus subsidies, and they want to send another $100 billion directly from the federal treasury to the insurance companies. And Republicans are saying, look, American consumers ought to have a say in that. If we're going to send money, it ought to go to families who they can make the decision of what works best for them. Give them the opportunity to make the insurance companies compete by lowering the prices, by offering other opportunities for insurance that works for that specific family, not the straitjacket that is the one-size-fits-all of Obamacare.
And look, the shutdown that Democrats perpetrated on this entire nation and put people even in a bigger financial hole to be able to afford Obamacare when it does go up, unless they can agree with Republicans to do something to actually reform the system. I mean, that is even more unforgivable on the parts of Democrats, what they've done with that shutdown, and still didn't fix the problem. Great to have you on the program, and thank you for all of your years as a doctor. It really played a role today, as I'm sure it did for many of your patients for years. Good to see you, Senator.
Harris. Great to be with you.
You got it.
So Minnesota Congresswoman and squad member Ilhan Omar says she knows who to blame as the Trump administration probes if millions of taxpayer dollars from her state were sent to terrorists in her native Somalia.
If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system in not figuring that out and basically charging them.
Fox News contributor Mary Catherine Ham joins us now. It is, you know, interesting that she doesn't mention all the associates connected to her campaign worker, and places where she hosted her campaign parties at as well, MK.
Yeah, there also wasn't a denial. That felt like sort of a tell to me. I think she knows much more about all of this than she's let on the whole time. As you allude to, she has plenty of associates, close friends, allies who were enriching themselves off of $250 million defrauded from one program alone, maybe $1 billion in the state. And this is money that would have gone to children being fed, the homeless being housed, and did not. That's what the compassion adds up to. But the fact is that a lot of people were making a ton of money off of this, and she just wants to lay it off on someone else. But ma'am, you're in charge. You're in charge of the district. You're in charge of making federal law and should be interested in checking where federal money is going, especially when it's supposed to go to the compassionate services that you're supposed to be all about. But that's not the situation here, and I think it's true for Tim Walz as well as Keith Ellison, who's on audio, on tape, saying to the folks who defrauded Feeding Our Future, saying, I'll help you out with this. Let's get you out of this investigation. Like, these people were in on it.
Exactly.
And that is the major part of this.
Real leaders clean up their own backyard. If you care about your community, you hold people accountable. You don't hide behind identity politics. Trump understood that, and that's why the elites hate him, because accountability feels like oppression to people that were never held accountable. Let me know what you guys think about this quick video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you're new, and as always, let me know what you react to. We're out.